Okay, this is a video on kind of quick applications of a lot of celestial designs. I notice a lot of people are kind of drawn to them these days. I think a little bit more. I see people buying like the nebulas and starbursts and galaxies, and that really makes me happy because I really enjoy this type of imagery. I'm a big fan of kind of deep space imagery. I took a couple classes of astronomy in college, but that got me looking through a lot of magazines like Sky and Telescope and things like that after we went out and did a field trip, taking kind of pictures of the night sky, just using regular cameras, and it was just amazing what could be picked up on film. And, just a 35 millimeter camera with a zoom lens on it. We set our these things called astropods that are battery powered little tripods that, compensated for the Earth's rotation and whatnot. And it was just really amazing what you could pick up, like the Orion Nebula, and I don't know, just different things, the Pleiades, and I don't know, that always kind of amazed me. But I came out with a lot of designs like that for the Stampscapes line just because I love those types of things, and I'd see photographs coming back from the initial Hubble telescope imagery, and just really amazing stuff. Okay, so this one is Starbirth right here. I'm going to try to go through and do some really quick applications. I'm going to use a lot of my blue tones because I can add in pinks and whatnot to make those ones purple. And I can also add in greens to go to that emerald green colored scheme. Okay, my blue pad right here is a little bit dry, so I'm going to re-ink here. Okay, I have my re-inker right here. Oh, that was my Prussian blue. I have the Prussian blue one too. Here's my number 3 Marvy re-inker. Anytime you're inking up any type of stamp pad, don't put too much ink in it, otherwise it can get a little puddled up in there. You want just the right amount to keep it. I like a medium. I like a medium wet pad. I don't like it too overly wet. Sometimes you get a brand new pad and sometimes it's almost too juicy. When you're using it, at least with stamps that have a lot of tight detail. And that being said, the celestial designs have a lot of tight detail in it. There's a lot of condensed dots like that, so I mean, if you do get a little bit puddled up in some areas, that's fine, but you don't want it too puddled up everywhere. Okay? That being said, the raised eye base pads don't really, they're not going to give you too much problems. It was, like there were certain types of things like a VersaFine or something like that, or I think it was Memories or something like that, if it was really super juicy and brand new. And if you use too much pressure in the ink, just be careful about that. Don't let it puddle up on you. Okay, this one's Starbirth, and I'm going to kind of mass produce this, the cards being done in this video here, just because I want to show you just how fast you can really get through these ones, okay? Alright, so that's Starbirth there, done in a Prussian blue. It's pretty dark blue. Now the imagery that I'm going to use in this in terms of land imagery, I'm going to use the imagery that's kind of based around nature set number 8, okay? Just to keep things simple. A lot of people have that. And if they want to kind of check out some different types of looks with that imagery using the different celestial designs, I want to show you some options for that. Okay, this is the Cloud Cumulus that comes with that nature set number 8, and I'm running this into that imagery a little bit. You can even have it coming from over the top if you want, like this. Okay. Now I am using glossy cardstock, but you can do this on matte. It will look different though. It'll have a kind of a duller look. It doesn't get as kind of intense in terms of the brightness or darkness, okay, as glossy cardstock does. But that being said, on matte cardstock too, there's other possibilities that you can do on that are not available to us on glossy. Like, for example, I can't go over this with like chalks or pastels. On a glossy cardstock, you need something with a little bit more tooth. So matte paper would be kind of more suited for that. So you can go on and color things with those types of soft media that you just can't do on glossy. All right, but the glossy is going to be really, really fast, and you'll see. Okay, so that's that. That's my layout for that. So overlapping, changing the angle a little bit. Here's this kind of dramatic. This one's not really celestial, but it's kind of in the spirit of a, kind of a dramatic sky image to give your imagery kind of a different look, okay? All right, this one's just cloud with lightning. I'll tell you what, I'll go real high on it up here like this. And when I'm doing kind of a lakeside type of scene that we'll do on this, I love doing reflections. Okay, so I'll just flip this around like this, okay? And then we'll have that lightning coming from below, or this could be top and bottom, doesn't really matter. Okay, and then if you want to, this could just be filled in with some additional tone around this to make that lightning stand out, but I'll just use the cloud in here. All right, now this one's just blue. It's a little bit of a different blue. I'm going to make these look a little bit different from each other in terms of just the foundation colors, okay? Don't worry about that space in between. We'll fill that up with color. Okay, when we sponge in some additional tones, or, I mean, you could put a cloud in there if you want to, but I'm just going to leave it like that, okay? 2 down, several to go, a lot of fun. Let me show you a little bit of variation. I really like doing this on this Milky Way stamp like this, okay? Now if you have a pen, like this Marvy big thick brush marker, okay, it's pink, I like going into it and just kind of, I'm swirling this around a little bit and picking up some of that blue, but I'm also mixing in this pink where I added a little bit more pink and rub off some of that blue. It'll read more as just straight pink, okay? Now this pen is really dry on me, but I can re-ink this pen too with the pink re-inker for the pad, and that'll kind of unpollute this tip here. But I just do a quick swirls like this, and it gets the tip nice and clean. Okay, let's go this way on this one, okay? Let's add kind of a nice Milky Way sky in blues and violets and pinks. We'll see what kind of mixture I came up with that. Okay, something like that. You see that variation happening in that space, okay? I can fill up with some more Milky Way in there as well, or you can fill in with some more kind of dramatic sky. Okay. Overlap into it, 1/2 inch to 1 inch maybe. See this one right here? Change your angle, okay? Like this. Don't try to stack things perfectly, okay? You want to overlap things and just keep your angles really loose, okay? A lot of people kind of, when they first get into scenic stamping, they're really kind of scared about overlapping too much, okay? But that's how I've designed the stamps to be used, okay? So it's conceived for ease of use. It's not for careful placement, which I wouldn't say it runs contrary to kind of a good application of them, but it's just easier to kind of stay loose with it, you know. So some people try to say loose, but then they're stacking it too perfectly, and it looks like, you know, brickwork of clouds or something like that, where it's stacked too perfectly. So you just kind of run it around like that, and it becomes nice and seamless, okay? And we're talking about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of overlap, so there's plenty of leeway in there, okay? Okay, let's see. Kind of moving on here. Oh, this one's really dramatic. Kind of celestial. Moon, big, huge moon. Anytime that, I think there was a supermoon the other day, and everyone's out taking photographs of it, right? It's because it's kind of a special celestial event, right? But that's what's fun about stamping. You know, every scene that you do could be kind of an exaggerated version of your idea of the kind of most dramatic moon you can have. One of the things I can stamp this too. You can also do this kind of at an angle sometimes like this, you know. You can kind of keep things a little bit more dramatic by putting things at a diagonal. Let's try that right there on this one, okay? Doesn't mean you have to do this thing diagonal. It's not designed for diagonal usage or anything like that. It's designed for however way you want to do it, okay? But there it is at a slant. Now let's use this cloud at a slant as well, okay? Kind of add it in like that. See that overlap? There's no kind of seam or clear indication of where one stamp impression ends and the other one begins. Okay, little thing with the cloud, they're being top lit here, right? So if I stamp this cloud above the moon, let's make it bottom lit by stamping it upside down, facing the light. Okay, so you have that right there. Nighttime sky filled in. We'll really make these pop out later. Here's the Nebula with star. I designed this one after this nebula called the Tarantula Nebula. It's because it has this little kind of tail going down there with this little star like that. I stylized this and, you know, kind of altered it, you know, for, I don't know, stamp usage to make it a little bit more, I don't know, dramatic and whatnot. But let's go like this here. Okay, let's just, oops, I had a big piece of dust there, so that didn't stamp out right there, but it doesn't really matter with an image like this, does it? Okay, I've been adding clouds around everything. Let's just leave this one blank, okay, and not put any clouds around it, you know, just for some variation here in this video. Okay, make sure that lint ball came off of that, and it is. Cloud with Crescent Moon. Okay, this galaxy right here, this design took me forever to draw, just because I wanted it. A galaxy is supposed to be, you know, just stars, and there's supposed to be a lot of depth in there, so I had to layer so many different types of textures in this and kind of go back and forth on it. But a really fun design when it came out, and I had to kind of make it look like it was, you know, spinning and stuff like that. It's easy to make something, you know, design that's stiff, but when it comes down to an image such as this one, I mean, it's not moving in real time, like a you know, whirlpool of water in the sink or something like that. But you want to give it that spirit of kind of movement without throughout the design. So that was the challenge of this one. But like I said, I really love celestial imagery, so I wanted to really get this one right, and really all of them, but this one was one of those ones that took a long time to get right. I kind of stopped drawing it for a while, then kind of went back to it, and, you know, just probably did it over the course of months. Okay, alright, I did that one in a Prussian blue, okay. Now, I don't know. Should we do some clouds around that? Let's put maybe let's put a few clouds around this one. Would we be able to see clouds like this in this, you know, spiral? No, you know. But who says we're taking this, you know, this is a shot from Earth, you know? If we could see something like that, you know, let's say one day a year or something, I don't know, something of that sort, that would be really awesome. So that's the fun thing about rubber stamping. You can kind of create your own type of scenario and situation with any type of imagery that's available out there. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these different settings right here. And let's go for a little bit of variation in terms of the color schemes that we have, okay? Lightning, Galaxy, Starbirth, Milky Way, Nebula with star, and Crescent Moon, okay? Now here's the theory behind all of these. In terms of lighting, okay? In all of these scenes right here, there's going to be some specific areas of light. In something like this, we have our lightning bolts. That's obviously going to be our light source in the scene, okay? but we want that light source to be reflected off of some of these clouds. So when I start toning this in, we're going to leave lightning light and untouched with ink when we start coloring it, okay? Sometimes people want to give a little bit of color to it, like, I want that lightning to be a little bit yellow. But if you color it yellow and you leave other areas white, what is the lightning? The lightning is now the darker thing, and the white is the light, okay? We want that to stand out. So if you want to color it something, then it just means that you have to take other objects around it and color them darker than the lightest color within a scene. Okay, so light source, lightning bolt, and reflection, okay? In here, it's not so definitive, but we want to get some color in here. We don't want to leave this completely white, but just leave some areas a little bit light and maybe some of those clouds a little bit light, okay? Milky Way, there's some kind of dominant stars in this one, like around in here. This is the, dominant light area. And, this is a nighttime sky, so I might want a little bit of tone kind of reflected, or lighting reflected off of those clouds down there. So light and some light through the clouds. On this one right here, Tarantula Nebula, the nebula will be the lightest thing. Same thing out here, will darken in the surrounding area pretty dark to make it look like a deep space image taken through, fairly powerful telescope. Crescent Moon, of course. Moon will be the lightest thing, and we'll have that light source reflected off of some of these clouds, okay? All right, so let's go. Okay, so these are all done in blues. I just did that for a quick exercise. I really like using browns on these ones too, and then adding kind of this iridescent type of blues and pinks into it as well. You can do any type of color scheme you want. If your favorite color is purple, then stamp these out in purple, okay? It doesn't have to be something photorealistic, okay? By nature, these are not photorealistic types of scenarios here, so you don't have to abide by something like that type of kind of notion. All right, so blue is a good foundation to start off with because you can take it into the cool tones and warm tones. You can take it into the violets, the greens, to each side of the color kind of wheel if you're kind of aware of the color wheel and how that kind of works. But what I'll do is I'll start off with some light tones and I'll work into some darker tones. This is just a little paper towel here. I have a feeling that I'll be able to use the same paper towel through all of these ones right here. Get it good and soaked up, okay? I also like using these things called stylus tools, but you can't, you can find these in some areas still. I still have a lot of the tips here, but they're not making them anymore. Things like sponges. I've done this type of toning with kitchen sponges, and it works pretty good. But the paper towel works fantastic for this too, okay? All right, so what I'm doing in here is I'm adding this tone in here. It's almost like finger painting, okay? The thing that you have to kind of watch out for, and I do too, is that we just don't tone everything out. But see how I've colored and all that? And I've left some areas light on the clouds. Now this is the type of thing that people say, oh, you make it look so easy. Well, I'm doing, you can see what I've done here. I've gone like this. Okay, let me just show you what I'm doing on a piece of copy paper here. I'm going like this, basically, right? And that's all I've done onto the top of this paper, okay? But I've left some of those clouds light. The thing that makes me look really good and makes me really look like I know what I'm doing is I just retain some of those areas of light. A lot of people color in everything and they don't leave any of the light, okay? So it just means you do less coloring, right? It doesn't mean you have to do more, so in theory, it's less, is better than everything, okay? So it's not like, okay, a cloud is going to be blue, so color in everything, okay? So just retain some areas of light, and then you have light source, and you have your reflected light, okay? So let's just keep doing this. Let's go on this one right here, okay? Kind of go around. There's just a little bit of cloud up there, so if I want that to kind of look light and reflecting that light, you see what I did right here? I put in a little bit of tone right up here. Sorry if it's not focusing in real good. Okay? And here's this little bit of cloud, but look at this. I've come in underneath the cloud like this and put some blue in here. So that really makes that cloud kind of look like it's reflecting some light. Okay? Now, if you're following along with this video and you think, and you have toned all that cloud out, don't, get upset. It's just, okay, cloud's not reflecting as much light. If you want some reflected off of some light, then just, leave these ones. If I did this scene 10 times, every one of them would probably look a little bit different from each other. Some clouds would be a little bit lighter, some might be toned out. It'll be different every time. There's no kind of set thing like, okay, there's a galaxy here. Well, where is that light reflecting off of? This cloud right here or this one? You know what I mean? It's not wrong, there's no wrong or right. The thing about this whole type of concept here is variation. So you just kind of oscillate it. You have, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, you know what I mean, throughout the whole thing. It's kind of called like checkerboarding, okay? Or that's one kind of terminology that you can use with that. But see how it's kind of oscillating that light and dark in there. I mean, I'm going to work through a range of blues too. I'm just going with this one blue right here in all of them, just, from a kind of a mass production kind of standpoint here, okay? You can almost do kind of a bunch of these like this if you want to. If you have some cards that you're making in mass, you need 10 of something or 20 of something. If you want them to have kind of that real kind of varied look, you can kind of do it in this fashion right here, but it really doesn't take a long time to do it. And sky imagery is really fast because it fills up so much of your card, you're just like you're done, when you do this type of thing. All right, here's the nebula without all that. Now you can really tell what I'm doing with this color application like this because there's no cloud that I'm kind of working around, but we'll put some of this tone right into, you see how I'm going into this, but I'm kind of staying away from some of that nebula type of formation, especially that really bright star down there. Okay, I have to use a little bit more color on this one because there's a lot more area to fill up. It's just like open space around there. This one would be a good one with some additional stars around it. Maybe I ought to combine like this one with the Milky Way in here. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. I think that'll be a good way to kind of fill in that surrounding area. Let me do this right here. Let me take this stamp right here, the Milky Way. You could just get some colors going on down there, and you could stamp your sky imagery right over the top of the color too. So it isn't like it's a little bit easier to kind of figure out what you have to work around if you stamp the imagery first and then tone in, but you can always go in there after the fact and stamp this out. Now see that where I stamp this out, if I stamp it over blue, that area in there is not going to be white. Okay, it'll look lighter because of the contrast, but you can do this at any time. Sometimes if we stamp this out too light and then we tone in, it's like, oh my god, I can't see the nighttime sky anymore. So all you do is you just ink it up again in a darker color and stamp it, where you where you want more definition to be. Okay, so there that is. You see how that just kind of fills in there with some additional sky forms? It almost looks kind of like an abstract in there. Okay, grab my paper towel. One paper towel goes a long way, doesn't it? Okay. I'll add some variation. I'll have some areas where there's a lot more ink and some areas where there's less. Okay. But for the most part on this one, I really want that nebula formation to really stand out. Okay. I'm not sure what color the tarantula nebula looks like when I see it in photos. All right. Let's get that crescent moon to really stand out in terms of contrast. Okay, there's just a little bit of area up there, so when I start applying this ink right there, kind of be careful that you don't just tone out all that blue. I might want a little bit of tone on that blue moon, though. Don't be gun shy and just, like, be super careful about like keeping way away from your light source. You can come into it, but just come into it with a very light touch, okay? You don't have to scrub it in there. And see how I'm kind of going along and along and along without re-inking this? The more I go, okay, the drier it becomes on here. And if I want to get a lighter version of that color, whatever I happen to be applying, I just use a real light touch with a dry version of it. And there's no chance that I'm going to just eradicate that, okay? Okay, let's look at this oscillation of light and dark through these clouds down here, okay? All right, see how some of them, I've just left some of them a little bit lighter than others, okay? Do the same thing for this. Okay, this is one done in Prussian blue. It's a little bit darker. This one's a little bit lighter. See, it has a little bit of a different spirit to it. You can do these ones in black, too, and just color in, too. It takes on a different look when you work in colors, different values of those colors, or in black, okay? Black will have the most contrast, naturally. Potential contrast. All right. I love that kind of a Hubble picture, one of those early Hubble pictures. I think that's what it was called. It was like the formation or birth of a star or something like that. I was reading like one of the captions, and it really kind of captured, triggered the imagination type of thing. Okay, look at that. All right. I mean, you can kind of subdue these too. Those clouds don't have to be white. You can kind of have them a little bit lighter, like that. Or a little bit darker, I should say. A little bit more subdued. Okay? All right, that's the first color on these ones right here. Do you see the kind of our lighting scheme now? All right? Pretty fast in terms of development. Okay. Now, I haven't forgotten about changing the hues of these a little bit. I'll tweak that a little bit later. That was my fairly light blue. That was called salvia blue. If it was like distress ink, use your tumbled glass would be fantastic for that. This one right here is the number 10 blue. It's real similar to a distress mermaid lagoon or a memento Bahama blue. Okay, it's pretty bright. This one from Marb, it's super bright. Wow. Oh, and I think I just re-inked this, so there's a ton of ink on here. There's almost too much. Okay, but just kind of take it around in there, blending it in accordingly. Boy, that is really super juicy. Okay, I just won't re-ink this. My applicator here, my expensive applicator, too much with this one. Okay. I'm barely touching it right in here to get a little bit of variation right here. When you move into your darker tones, especially if your pad is super wet like this one was, just be careful that you don't eradicate all of your light in the scene. Okay, see how bright that is? Okay, let's go with this one. So just kind of stay generally within the lighting scheme that you've established with your first color. I might be going in a little bit farther into the scene from the perimeter than I did, in some areas. But just in general, remember to kind of, vary the application a touch, okay? So see that right there? A little bit blotchy here. Let me go a little bit more of this on the perimeter. Okay. Something like that. Nice and rich and deep in terms of tone. Okay. Same with this one. I'll kind of go a little bit more perimeter oriented like this. How's that? This pad is so juicy. I wanted to get a lot of ink on my pads because I knew I wanted to do several of these in kind of a mass production style, so I wanted the ink application to go on pretty fast, but that first inking up here was almost too much on here. I like kind of going on with a like I said, medium to kind of drier application of it. so I have a lot more control over it and the rate at which it applies. Alright, so going around like this. It's like staining wood or something like that, you know. Okay. That one. I mean, that's not a long time that you have to spend with any given color. The first color, you know, there's a little bit more of an application because it gets, you know, you're using it for a lot more coverage and kind of spreading it around. When you move them to your darker colors, it tends to be a little bit more kind of perimeter oriented because you want it going from light to dark, okay? So the lightest colors go in the farthest. Darker colors are kind of, you know, they go in a little bit less, and the darker colors are more on the perimeter. I mean, you can fine-tune things where there's darker areas right in here or not, you know, and whatnot, but just in general, okay? All right, so you got some tone there, and last one right here. I'll show you the difference between this side and this side. See that, how that brightness is in there and over here? That's one thing that's, a lot of people, when they see scenes of mine, or they're thinking about approaching it, they think, well, theirs would never come out the same as mine. And I tell people it could, but a lot of people are used to coloring something. They're thinking left to right, side to side, top to bottom, okay? They're thinking in terms of like a two-dimensional space. I am working in 2 dimensions, but I'm kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking 3 dimensions, okay? So I'm thinking about kind of layering colors down, one on top of another like this, okay? And I'm thinking about this in terms of space, okay? Not, I'm talking about outer space, but I'm talking about like distance, okay, space-wise. So when something like this, I'm thinking I want it to look like it's deep space. I want it to look like it has some depth in here. So I'm adding a lot more tone typically than what people are used to in most forms of stamping. They might do a little bit of things, like you're all probably doing it in terms of coloring. And then, you know, you might put this kind of, this border around it, right, to kind of give it a vignette and to enclose your subject matter. Everyone does that, you know, with like brushes or whatever. This is the exact same thing, but I'm just using, you know, more ink. So this is like 2 layers right here, but I'll go with probably 2 more on this one, you know, for a total of 4, okay? So I'm thinking about these ink layers built up like this. So I'm thinking a little bit in terms of like deeper space and what these inks can do in terms of dye-based inks, okay? You can give the illusion of deeper space. Okay, this one's a darker blue right here, something like, I'm trying to think, Blueprint Sketch Distress ink, any kind of navy blue, you know, you have, everyone has a navy blue, kind of a dark blue in their pads. Now see this one right here, I'm kind of staying a little bit more perimeter oriented like this. You don't have to go in too far. Okay. And see, it's kind of, you know, that nice, deep, rich space right there. And that looks different than if I was just, let me show you what this looks like. Just straight blue, okay? So you tell me what the difference is between this one, okay, this space right here, and this. This one's flatter, right? And all it took was 2 other really easy applications of ink underneath this one. So this is the same blue, you know, that I've used on both areas, but look how much richer this one is, because these inks are transparent, so you get that blue, that number 10 blue, and the salvia showing through. You know, if it was like tumbled glass underneath it, you know, the distress ink, it would give it that nice, rich, deep space. This looks fairly flat. This looks fairly deep, right? Just in terms of the colors. I mean, I have the cloud down there as well. Okay, let's just keep going on like this. Okay. Okay, there's that. Alright, I wanted this video to be really fast. We're at the 30-minute mark. I think you get the concept, though, here. This is a lot of a lot of cards here, a lot of scenes, and different ones. I mean, I'm using that cloud Cumulus in a lot of them, but this is a lot of cards to kind of, complete. Let's see if I can get it done in 40 minutes. I'm not sure. Okay. Navy blue here. I mean, each one of these cards, in terms of a certain color, I mean, we're talking seconds, right? I don't even think it's 1 minute, to apply this tone. Okay. The darker you take certain areas of your card, the lighter the lights areas will seem by contrast, okay? Should we go up to the Prussian blue? Might as well, since we did re-ink that, so let's go ahead and utilize that. Okay. This one was done. This one, the imagery was stamped out in Prussian blue. Look at that, just one, I don't know, maybe a half sheet of paper towel, and I'm just using one little side of it too, so we're talking about the conservation of, materials in terms of our application tooling. Okay, this one I can come in a little bit farther into the scene from the perimeter. Look how that really makes that nebula stand out. That nebula will stand out much nicer in terms of colors too when we add some additional tones to these scenes. Okay. All right. So we have really nice ranges, right, of all these different values in here. Oh, let's do this right here too. I tell you what, since we're going to be stamping out our imagery in black, let's go one step more. I mean, this is not taking a long time. There's a lot of cards here. Let's go all the way to black and just do what I call tipping the edges, okay? Just putting a little bit of a value one step darker, because that'll make the interior seem one step lighter, okay? Like this. Now, if there's an area that's just right next to a light source, then I might not use the black. Like, I might not use the black right there, or if I did, I'll just do a tiny little corner like that. Okay. You kind of blend it in a little bit, taper it, so it's a little bit darker, and as it moves in, it's a little bit lighter. So there we have that. Okay. I feel like this is, well, I was going to say I feel like I'm on an assembly line, which I guess I am. Can you imagine churning out some cards in kind of this manner? If I was doing like 100 cards, I don't know if I would do this style. I might just do a brared background or something like that and stamp the images right over the background, and that would be really fast and easy. But I don't know, this isn't too bad though. I guess I could crank some out. I'm not really into mass production, kind of the repetition of imagery. I get so bored with doing something like that. Okay, so we have that down. All right, let's add some variation of colors. Let's see if I can still use this paper towel, if I can find a spot here. I bet you I can. There we go. Okay, so let's bring in some different types of colors. Let's go with some pinks and violets for a couple of these scenes, then maybe move it into, I don't know, greens or something like that. Okay, and I need to switch this out. Clean piece of my paper here before I toss it out. Okay, let's try a little bit of pink in here. This is just a really light pink. This is a Rosemary Marby, okay? Just any kind of real pale pink. I'd start out. This is almost too bright of a pink for me. I wish it was a little bit duller, you know, to start off with, but I'm kind of dulling it out here, and I'm kind of flattening down my applicator here too. So just a nice light touch, okay? Think about it like dry brushing some colors into you know, a painting or something like that. Call it kind of scumbling. That way, you get kind of the feel of what it'll look like, you know, before you kind of fully commit to that tone. I kind of like it. And now see, I'm kind of going with more of a direct, you know, ink up and then application in here. Now here's the thing now, when you start doing stuff like this, kind of remember to retain some kind of lighter areas. It's easy to just kind of fill in everything. Now see, I'm just kind of adding this around in some of those clouds, but kind of retaining the lightness of some of them. I might tone in a little bit. And here's the thing, where I overlap, you know, completely overlap pink and blue, it forms more of a violet tinge, but look how that looks right there. Let's bring some of that pink right into this little area down here. I was thinking just bring in just a touch of it like that, so it looks like it's reflecting off of that cloud. So see all the variation in here? We have some blues, violets, and some pinks all in the same area, just in terms of how much of this do I use on it. Okay, let's see which color should we... Let's go with pink on this one too, okay? This pink over here, overlapping the blue, almost looks like that orchid, right? It's because that's a combination of this pink and the blues that are already applied underneath it. So sometimes you don't even need you don't need a lot of colors. You don't need those kind of intermediate tones. Let's try a little bit of that orchid anyway. I think it's the exact same color as this pink and whatever blues are already down there. So you can kind of mix and match. You can really get a lot of mileage out of all of your inks. Most people are thinking, in terms of the inks that they're buying, they're thinking about that color in its purest form. I want that color, okay? But you can get a lot more mileage when you're doing this type of application of your inks, because any combination of dye-based inks, when used in combination with one another, will form different tones. So sometimes you don't even need those other types of colors, specific colors. You can just get the matches, kind of the mergers of the two. Let's go with a little bit of straight pink on this one. This one's a really bright pink right here. I'll add it into kind of my darker areas first and just kind of migrate it a little bit at a time into this area. Okay, so do something like that. Okay. I want to leave some of that blue just as is. Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, let's try a little bit on this one right here, the pinkish tinge quality. Okay, look at that. I see I'm kind of wiping it in the spirit of that spiral kind of movement. We'll get a little touch of the same lighting on the clouds, where the clouds are reflecting that light. Okay, something like that. I'll leave the center of it fairly light, like that, but look at those subtle types of tones in there. All right, let's mix it up a little bit here. Let's see. Okay, so these ones are going into the violet kind of direction. Let's use a little bit of this one right here. This one's violet. Okay, this one's really dark. It's just this called violet? Yeah, it's called violet. I was thinking, is it called violet or purple? Pretty dark, okay? If you have any kind of lavenders or anything like that, you can use a magenta and something like this if you want to. Okay, see that right there? It has a little bit of a different feel to it, though, doesn't it? It doesn't look violet, but it's because it's over those other tones in there, the other blue tones. Okay, let's try a different color scheme in a couple of these other ones right here, just for some variation again. All right, let me go for it. I need a new paper towel on that. Okay, so one of my favorite color schemes is kind of a jewel-looking emerald type of color scheme. Let me just try. Okay, let me just try this one right here, Pear Tart. Okay, Memento, just so you can see that these other brands of inks also work fine. Okay. All right, so we're going to take this from this blue-toned type of scene, which I really like too. It's beautiful. It's almost, I don't want to go over it, but see that right there? Isn't that kind of cool? Let's bring some of it in. Let's retain some of that blue, though, straight blue, so I won't go over everything. See, I'm just barely touching down like this, so I can get that kind of application right in here, okay? And see where I'm kind of adding it around my light source. I don't want a real heavy application of it, okay? All right. So see that right there? It takes on a little bit of a different spirit when you kind of introduce that. And one of the things that's changed with this color right here is we've added something really warm, or a warm tinge, okay, into an otherwise cool color scheme, right? Just all blues, okay? Kind of makes it a little bit more, I don't know, atmospheric maybe. Okay, so this one right here, this lightning bolt. Let's add a little bit of a tinge of warmth into this, right? That would seem to be appropriate, potentially. Let's add some of this antique linen distress ink. It's a really super light, but warm tinge, okay? It's not a big commitment to any kind of warmth. Might seem kind of a strange notion to add brown, like, it's a light beige, which is kind of like a light brown into something like this, but let's see what it looks like, okay? We can kind of tell what it looks like on a white piece of paper, but what it looks like kind of layered over blue tones, especially a cool tone, kind of remains to be seen. That warmth is adding a little bit of kind of a greenish tinge in there as well, okay? I can add some of this around some of these bolts too, and the bolts will be, I don't want to do it over all of them because I want those bolts to be kind of light. I think that's good. Let's do the same thing around this moon right here, okay? See that tinge in there? See, look that warmth it brought to those clouds right there, right? It's different, isn't it? And let's bring that down into that reflected light as well. Okay? Look at that little touch of warmth in there. Isn't that kind of fun? And see, when I'm working really pale like this, it just works out very harmoniously. If I go with like a super yellow or something like that, it'll work. It'll look completely different, though. It won't be quite as subtle. Let's try some of this in here, okay? Let's bring some of this little bit of antique linen down here. Okay, now this is where I start going crazy with my presentations here. Here's a little bit of this warmth in here into the pink and violets, just for a little tinge of something else, right? I don't know if you can see it in here. It's right here, here, and here. It looks a little richer, right? In terms of the color scheme, a little bit more sophisticated, perhaps. I don't know. Okay, looks pretty good. So, all right. That is that. Let's get into some of the different kind of land imagery to kind of ground this. You can certainly just leave things as is. You don't have to stamp anything more. It could be a statement in terms of a kind of celestial imagery like that. But kind of grounding things is really fun to do, and it makes for a super dramatic scene. These would be really fantastic if you kind of mount them on cards. I didn't stamp them light enough to where you can kind of stamp kind of a word stamp over the top of it, unless you did like a word stamp in white over, kind of a lighter area. But you can stamp it on a different piece of paper, and you can mount it on there and frame it, and then kind of mat that or mount it, and that looks really fantastic. Quotes go really well, of course, with your sky imagery. It just tends to be very evocative and kind of dreamy. Okay, so I'm just going to do these in, I could stamp it in a Marvy black, which is a pretty dark black, but let's just kind of bump things up a little bit in terms of darkness, so I'll use a VersaFine black ink here, so it's just a little bit darker than a Marvy black. Takes a little bit more time to dry too, like where I am. Might take a day or two, okay? Alright, this is just the oak branch. Kind of adding this like this. It's like we're laying down and looking up at the night sky. Okay. Oops. You gotta be careful, this is an oil-based pigment ink right here, so that kind of slid on me just a touch, but that's alright. It doesn't look bad because it's against that dark night sky, it just looks like a boulder branch right there, okay? So we have something like that going in there. This would look really fantastic with a couple of extra kind of gel pen touches or some birds flying in the sky. That would be fun, and it kind of makes it a little bit more whimsical. All right, let's go with something. Let's go with something fairly bold against this sky. We have a lot of area in here, okay? It's a lot of space. I'm talking about area space, not space, outer space again. Let's see, which one do I want to do on this one? Let's go with, trying to decide on which way's up and which way's down on this one. Let's go for the pines and rocks here. Okay, let's go for something like this. Okay. All right. Got a nice frame for that night sky up there. And what I was talking about, it'd be good, to really finalize this, is to add things like little white gel pen additions. Let me do it on this one, especially since I don't have any clouds or anything else out there like that. It's just one dot at a time, but I don't know, what are we talking about here to fill in this whole night sky? A lot of open space. What, maybe 1 minute? 1 minute for, kind of a really effective application of media. Okay, so see those little kind of night sky stars up in these areas like that. Okay, all right, so 2 down. Let's keep going on here. Here's our Milky Way Lg stamp. Let's go for the Lakeside Cove here. Or let's go for a couple of these different images, I'm not sure. Okay. The scene's already fairly busy with all that stuff going on in the background, but if you use stamps that are fairly silhouette in nature, you can just stamp anything right over the front of them for a dramatic look. Tell you what, maybe we'll go for the Lakeside Cove and Pines and Rocks in this one, okay? See that right there? Let's go with the Pines and Rocks to each side of that Lakeside Cove for a nice bold type of setting. Bold and hopefully kind of nice and dreamy. Okay, I just used a small portion of it. Only had a small portion to stamp there with it. Overlap, 1/2 inch or so to each side. There's no careful placement needed with my designs. Okay, so hopefully it looks like just, you know, continuation of that setting right there. All right, I'll tell you what, on this one right here too, let's have an overhanging tree limb. Okay, it's kind of a different type of tree, right? But you see that happen in nature all the time. You see the deciduous and the evergreens kind of in the same areas. Right. So that kind of frames off the top, and doesn't it kind of make that Milky Way area stand out even lighter in contrast. You can even have this coming from below. Here's a tree limb up above, and it could be a bush or something like that down below. All right, you have a little fisherman out there for someone's birthday or Father's Day or whatever, you know. Okay, another one right here. Let's move this along. Starbirth as the focal point of this piece. Okay. The Lakeside Cove. I want to cap this off. I never know what I'm going to use until I see it, you know, and then I'll go with this overhanging tree limb coming from right above. Okay, like this. Okay, and let's add some bolder objects in the foreground. Now, on the other one I used it to each side, but let's use this in the foreground, okay? Layers, right? Remember kind of thinking in terms of spatially, three-dimensionally, you know, in terms of color and objects. Giving it the illusion of space, everything's all on 2 dimensions, of course, you know, nothing's deep, you know, it's just done on a card, but there you have that. It really pushes the celestial objects, the sky objects, really far back when you have objects that are really representatively closer to us. Okay, here's this one. Okay, now this one right here, I stamped it in a lighter blue, so this, on the right here, the Lakeside Cove didn't stand out very much because the background was a fairly dark version of blue, okay? Now this one right here, it's a pretty dark blue, but it's not as dark, so this should stand out a little bit more. Okay, now which way is up and which way is down? Let's go up that way and down this way. I'm going to aim this right in the middle here, okay? If I'm a little bit off, it doesn't matter. Okay. Fairly dramatic in terms of kind of the setting right there when you put sky images reflected in water. You know, if it was a moon or something like that, or a sun or anything like that. Stars. Reflections are really kind of a big thing, like in photography. Photographers love going out kind of after a rainstorm and taking pictures of, you know, reflections and puddles and whatnot. Or a sunset sky in a muddy, you know, or I don't know, like a real smooth puddle on a trail or something like that. Instead of just taking it of the sky, you take that photograph of the reflection, and it, you know, it's kind of takes on a more kind of a creative spirit, you know, it's like someone's seeing things, you know, that, you know, opportunities, you know, or unconventional takes on certain types of things. You take their pictures of the reflection. All right, so anyways, there's the pines and rocks again in that foreground there. All right, let's just go with, have I used, yeah, okay. I'm trying to think of a different situation. Let's go with this one right here. Let's just go with some nice bold trees against this crescent moon sky, one of my favorite moons. I love full moons and everything like that, the boldness of it. But my favorite moon, I think, is probably it's the first day of like the day after a new moon. You know, it's just where that tiny little super fingernail part of a crescent moon is coming out. Look at this. I didn't stamp it out fully right there. Okay. I didn't stand up on this one. All right, and I think this is getting really kind of weirded out, but underneath here, let me go for a flatter kind of spot here. All right, so Stampscapes, all you do is you just kind of go back in. I mean, if you have a positioner, you can do it again, but all I'm doing is I'm just taking this part, I'm going to stamp it right in here, like that. Okay, I'll get a little bit more pressure. I'll pay attention to what I'm doing here. And that just fills in right in there, okay? Scenic stamping, it's one of the most forgiving genres of stamping you could possibly do. If you don't like something, you can just stamp over it with, you know, a tree or something like that. All right, so there you have that. Some bats or some nighttime birds, or, you know, you just have birds flying at night, you know, where they normally wouldn't. They'd be roosted or whatever somewhere. You can put it up there in the sky and it'll kind of give your scenes kind of a little bit of a different focal point or whatnot. Maybe I'll do that in a couple of these right here. Like these ones right here, that would be fantastic, I think, in terms of some sort of visual. Let me see, what do we have here? We have 6 scenes done in 1 hour. Okay, so that's a 10-minute card on each one of them. I was blabbing away explaining things, so I think these could be, you know, done in, you know, even less time. Gosh, I have all these pads everywhere here, too. Let me see if I can... Alright, this is driving me nuts. I've got pads everywhere here. Alright, I know you're watching a video here, but every one of you knows what I'm talking about when you're kind of trying to clear up space here and things like that, you know. Not finding room to work if you're a stamper watching this. Okay, so just black ink right here. Let's take this eagle. Okay, I'm not doing it in the VersaFine. I'll just do this in the Marvy black. Just dye-based ink black, whatever black you're working in. Look at that right there. It's kind of cool to have something in the sky there like that, right? I mean, would it be like that, you know, out in nature? You know, probably not. But it sure makes for a cool looking visual. Let's see if I have anything else here on my desk. Let's go with this different eagle right here. You can go for, you know, this 2 eagles in the sky, which I often do. Often like having them kind of flying around together, but I don't know. There's something to kind of objects like that. I mean, when you add that up there, it really takes on a different kind of emotional quality, right? You know, having something like that. There's something to the freedom and maybe the night sky. You know, that kind of lends itself to that type of kind of a visual. And again, you know, we're not necessarily just trying to do something, take, you know, a photograph of something that would exist out there that a camera can do so much better. Let me find, I like these birds so much. Let me go see if I can grab a couple more images to, okay, here's this one right here. It's Flock Large, and this one's Ducks Information. This one, I chose this one. These ones are kind of spiraling, like they're in a thermal or something like that. I don't know if these ones will really show up against here, but I don't know, there'll be some sort of visual in here. But I thought that would kind of look cool against that galaxy because it's kind of spinning as well. It'll be very subtle, of course, you know. You can kind of see them in there. Kind of goes along with that same spirit. But like I said, if I stamp that out in a lighter blue, then these black impressions here of those birds would show up a little bit more. And let's see. I don't want to stamp out these birds right, you know, in front of those that lightning bolt. Too dangerous for them. Let's put this one right here. Light even pressure when you get down to kind of small images. You don't want to use the same pressure that you were using with, you know, 3 by 4 inch ones with a lot of surface areas, or those skies that have a lot of surface area. When you get down to something like this, okay, really tiny, don't, you know, smash it down like, you know, like that, okay? Just light even pressure. People, you build up kind of a muscle memory over the course of the card, so just light even pressure. Okay, you don't need to smash it down. And you'll get a nice, crisp impression every time. See that right in there? This one's really subtle because it's so small, but it's just one of those little detailed types of things in there that you add to a piece that kind of, you know, if you give it to some recipient, maybe they'll notice it, maybe they won't. But if they look at it and inspect your card upon closer inspection, you'll reward them with some additional details like that. Okay, so pretty fast, you know, in terms of the numbers of cards that we did right here. A little bit of variations in the color scheme, you know, both all kind of grounded in your blue tones. But, you know, I did that just to show you just really how fast you can develop these types of cards, these sky imagery based cards, or, you know, imagery that's heavily based in any of these types of images that fill up so much of the real estate within a given card. Really achieving these kind of nice jewel tones through the use of multiple layered applications of ink. And then you can give it these little additional temperature tones, transitions of color, whatever, and to retain in all of these some sort of light source area, and in some instances, reflected light. Okay, so this was just a sky up here with your star birth and clouds underneath it, right? But then, if you stamp this in here, the clouds that are underneath the Lakeside Cove are now representative of reflections. Okay, so it's not just one continuous sky, it's the reflected areas down below, which is awfully fun, right? And that's the same thing, you know, to be said about this one right here. Anywhere where you've used kind of a lakeside type of situation like that, right? Look at that kind of reflection down there. And certainly the drama of a lightning bolt such as that. Okay, so anyways, these are really wet. I have to kind of be careful. I'm kind of being a little bit gingerly around the versifying impressions right now because that will be moist for, you know, for me here will be a few hours. If you're somewhere very arid with really dry air, then these would dry up much faster. But, you know, the dye-based inks are dried, you know, pretty fast, you know, 30 seconds or something like that after I apply those inks. They're pretty much dry and I could touch them and pick them up. A little bit of inky fingers, but not too bad. Okay, so if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. If you have any of these images or you picked them up recently or whatnot, I hope you're having fun with it. And if you have any questions, always drop me a note in the comment section and play around with your different kind of color schemes. You can go for some really super deeply different types of color schemes, I always recommend that people kind of mix and match. You know, you can grab your pear tart, you know, right here and use it with, you know, other types of brands of inks, you know, Memento, Distress, Marvy, Stampin' Up, etc. You know, just line them up going from light to dark, and then you would stamp out one of your light sky figures, and preferably one of your medium to darker tones, okay? And then you start toning in, going from light to dark like that, okay? The darker tones tend to be a little more perimeter oriented so that you have this nice range going from light, dark on the sides like that, okay? And it makes it really easy, and you can do it really quickly. And of course, I just did it with, you know, a paper towel like this. So have fun, enjoy, and thanks as always for tuning into the channel.